I do want to explore a tool called Wallstreet Survivor. It's actually a stock market simulation game. And what I like about it is it gives students $100,000. I don't know too many people who don't like to have some extra cash, but this gives you a fictitious $100,000 and allows you to play the stock market, which is really cool. How many of you know much about the stock market? Or what do you know about the stock market? I mean, obviously, I know there's Wall Street and there's people who used to be yelling and screaming ticker prices all the time and trade, buy, sell. But other than that, it seems like there's an awful lot of money being made in an industry that most of us are pretty ignorant of. And part of our financial literacy with adults, we want to bring them a little bit into awareness of what is actually happening. What are these people buying and selling? And I know we use the word stocks, but what does that mean? And I've gone through some websites that share financial vocabulary, and they are written at a very technical level, and they are very accurate. However, I think many of my adult learners scratch their head when they read some of these definitions, go, no, that didn't work for me. I need that in English, please, instead of financialese. So the nice thing about the Wall Street Survivor, and if you want to go to this site and play around as we're going through this, the site is wallstreetsurvivor.com. Wall Street Survivor is all one word. And I have this available on the 5squared.us site. So if you want to go to 5squared.us and just click on Hanging with Education, you can see tonight's session right here, September 19th. And you will see all the links for all the different tools and references that I'll be using for tonight. And I think I can make this a little bigger because if I remember right, it's very difficult to see on the screen. So again, we go to 5squared.us, look under September 19th, which today is obviously the 21st, so I should need to change that date. But down here, you'll see the links to Wall Street Survivor and some of the other tools we'll be using today. That way you don't have to type in all the links to get there. So I'm going to jump back over into Wall Street Survivor. The game does require that you have a sign-up. And if you'd like, you can take their video tour. I find that it's a little bit sales pitchy, and you'll find out why in a little bit. I'm going to click on sign-up. Not sign up. I'm going to click on login. If you don't have an account, you will have to create one. And you can create an account 3 different ways. You can use an AOL account. It surprises me that AOL is still in existence after all these years. You can sign in with Facebook, which many people have Facebook accounts now. Or you can simply make up your own username and link it to your email address, which is something I've done. So I'll go ahead and log in. If you have a classroom full of students, it's really important for all of your students to make accounts because you can make classroom competitions where everyone in the class starts with a set amount of money and they're competing against each other for financial dominance within the classroom, which should be interesting. I've logged in and we're at the dashboard now, and we can see as I scroll down there's a list of courses, and you can see that I've currently started one that's called the Giants of Silicon Valley, and it's an introductory course. They use the history of the tech bubble and all the tech action, because there was a lot of financial movement in the stock markets with Silicon Valley's growth in the early 80s. And they highlight different companies. How were they affected by the stock market? How did their company's development affect the stock market? And they teach some of the terminology as well. And you can see down below, there's going to be some other courses that are recommended to me. And then I can click on completed to see which courses I've completed. And it says over here, I haven't completed any yet. These courses are both good and bad. I'm going to hit continue course just so you can see where I was in the middle of a course. Up top, there's an expand button that comes down and lets you jump between courses. Leagues are things you set up to allow either you to compete against people around the world, or you could set up a private league, so it's just you and your students. Portfolio is the collection of stocks that you've invested in any of your leagues. The videos, there's a bunch of videos available to teach you different parts of financial literacy as it relates to Wall Street. And then over here you have a little ideas thing that helps you with different investment strategies that you might want to try and play around with. The nice thing about this whole simulation is you could play with money, and it's not going to hurt you if you mess up. So you can see here, this is a student in the middle of a course, and in this case I'm the student. We can see I've gone through the introduction, the history of Silicon Valley, from boom to bust, from bust to boom, and now I have the social wave of startups, and I can hit continue that step. And I just want to highlight a little bit about what are these lessons like. I find it interesting that the lessons have a running chat available where students and teachers could leave notes and thoughts about the lesson. This might be good for editing and feedback. However, I have not seen any notes in here. I'm wondering if that might be closed within a class system. That would be awesome, but I really wasn't able to verify that yet. Because if you're in a closed system and the whole class could be taking notes on a particular lesson that they're teaching in here, that would be really a nice feature. You can see by the content over here, it is a lot of reading. So learners who learn best in other modalities other than reading, they may have some difficulties going through some of these courses. So I do think that's a limitation on their courses. They might want to add at least some voice to text. And you'll notice that I stopped this lesson because I've reached the dreaded financial firewall. It used to be that all these lessons, or at least complete lessons, were free completely. Now they have an investment. Okay, and David's sharing that it's very hard to read anything on the site that I'm showing. Let me see if I can make that larger and see if that helps. Okay, I don't think 150%. Let's see how that works. Please let me know if that's any better. So again, the limitation I had was that I got to a certain point in the lesson and it started asking me for money. And I understand they need to make some money. But that was disappointing because these used to be free lessons. So I'm going to back out of the lesson, and because I've zoomed in so much, I'm curious to see how this looks at this resolution. All right, that's not horrible. You can see the other lessons that they have, or maybe you can't see it because it still is small. Yeah, it is difficult to read on the stream. And I'm wondering, there may be some video setting I can discover for text-heavy sites. and how I might do screen sharing with that. Thank you for sharing that, David. I'll explore that in the next few weeks to see if there's a way I can make that larger. But down here, here's another class that's completely based on Apple. And it talks about the introduction, goes right through Steve and Steve Jobs. That's Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the two people who started Apple. And it goes through some of their history. As they're going through the history, they're relating that, of course, to investments and how Apple's birth changed some of the investment game. And of course, Microsoft had something to do with that as well during the time. Google came in and they changed some of how Wall Street reacts. And of course, Facebook had an impact, and Amazon. So all of our big tech companies, learners can go through and read through some of the history and how it was affecting the financial markets and investing. Which, for kids, they've heard the names. They may not have dug into the history a whole bunch. Those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, well, we kind of lived through some of this. We might have been unaware of all the investment implications, but we can definitely see today what some of those investments produce for the rest of society. On the right-hand side, it says My Portfolio. And it talks about performance. It says, I don't have any stocks. And I can go ahead and trade my first stocks. Now, if I had anything, I could look under top holdings and I can see what are the things that are making me the most money. And down here, they'll recommend some. In this case, they're saying Apple and Intel are two companies I may want to invest in. But again, as an ignorant stock investor, I don't know why I want to invest in those. But if I just want to try some things, so let's just click on Apple. Oh, there's an internal error, of course. I have not encountered that before. Let me try that again and see if that continues. So maybe Apple stock is not good. HTML is telling us, please don't. Oh, that is crashed. So that particular link they have is dead. The stock market has abbreviations for each stock. So Apple is AAPL. So we can still look for Apple stock. And for some reason, the whole site is having problems. Let me go back to the home page. And I want to go to My Portfolio. And it's giving me an error. If anybody is able to get on the wallstreetsurvivor.com site, and if you're registered, it would be very interesting to see if you're able to go to your portfolio. I'm going to reduce the font just a bit here so I can see some of the menus that I'm used to seeing. In the top where it says Stock Game, I can click on that. And it gives me the option to join a league. So over on join a league, I can create my own league if I want. So in this case, I might create my own. Creating a league just takes a few seconds. The league name is going to be Hanging with Education. I can see the name is available. I can make it public or private. And I just want to check out what this is like. Here is the league URL. And I can actually post that, I hope, in our chat. Start date is today. I'm going to end it tomorrow. All right, so let's go to September. Let's do it tomorrow just so we're not clogging up a league. I can put a logo in there, which I don't want to. Do I want a prize? No. But if I had limitations, how much money do I want to give my students? In this case, I'd like to start with a really realistic amount. Our learners, I mean, even $10,000 may not be realistic for a lot of my learners, but it's a whole lot more realistic than 100,000. Most of us don't stumble upon 100,000. 10,000, maybe we take out a loan or whatever else. I don't think that's a good investment strategy, but at least it's more in the ballpark of a possibility. Should I allow for option trading? Well, if I don't know what that is, I probably don't want that right off. Should I allow for short selling? Because this is an introductory league, I don't want short selling on, and I don't want trading on margin. And for those of you who know about stocks and know the language, you'll know what those different things are. For the rest of us who just want to get in and play around, just know that I'm limiting some of the options about borrowing and spending money that students don't have. I want them just working within a budget first. So I hit create my league. And I'm really hoping it doesn't come up with that error it had before. And it's asking me if I want to save that. I won't do that right now. So the league is set up. I can share it on Facebook. David is sharing that he has the window open to the Wallstreet Survivor website. David, I'm wondering if you see an option to click on, I'm on the wrong screen right now, but if you have an option to click on my portfolio, I'd be interested to see if that runs into an error that I was getting earlier. I want to get the address for this league so I can drop it in here in case people want to just play around with it. So here it is. It's leagues/hanging with education. And I'll put that in the chat. League/hanging with education. Let me make sure I spelled that correctly. I did. So in the chat, that should be a link that brings you to our pretend league. And we'll see if people can get into that. There are different members where I can indicate where they're from. I signed into my account when I was living in Frenchville. So obviously that's what they have for stats for me. So I can see where my league players are from. No problem getting to your portfolio. Okay, thank you, David, for checking that. So it is something very specific to this particular login. I've not had difficulties with that before. All right, so this league, Hanging with Education, I would like to start investing with this. So under stock games, I want to join my league. So I go to my leagues, Hanging with Education. I want to visit that league. I'm in here, ready to go, and now I want to start investing. No activity in this league. Invite your friends to join. So I could do it on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram as well. And then in my ranking, it'll show me how much money. I still have only $10,000. And over here it says my portfolio. So I want to click on trade my first stock. And you'll notice it tells me what league I'm in. It tells me how much money I have. It tells me my margin. And then the market is closed right now. So it's a horrible time to do a demo on a stock simulation. It's interesting to note that Wallstreet Survivor works with real-time stats. So all of the numbers that you see in all the companies are real companies and real stocks. They're real time as well. The difference is they've offset everything by 15 minutes. So people who are into really quick trades, buy and sell, a few seconds later, a few minutes later, that will not work well in this simulator. But for people who are going to do day trading or they want to trade long term, that can work. So I might want to search for a stock. They have some stocks that have been traded a bunch. And there's a bunch of strategies on how you trade stock. Now I only have $10,000. So I have to look at the price of these stocks. It's amazing that Ford Motor Company has gone down to $12 a share. That used to be quite a bit higher. Something like Amazon.com for $789 a share. I don't know if I could afford to invest in something that high. So this is a point where I might want to know some of my favorite companies. Over here it says I could choose a random stock. I can click on that. It'll come up with a random stock. And it'll ask me if I want to buy or sell some of the stock. Well, I don't have any of it, so I would have to buy some if I wanted. I can click on random stock again, and it comes up with a different one. Now, we're doing this blind. And of course, if we had real money, we would never do this blind. We'd want to do some research on the company. We want to find out what's going on in the company and look at some maps and graphs and things. But just for right now, so we can say, I want to show you how the purchase price works. I saw that this particular silicone processing place, it's up to $7.45 a share. It went up 9 cents today. That was a pretty big jump. So let's assume I want to jump in on this one. This looks like a nice little up-and-comer. So I type in the abbreviation for the stock. I click Add. And it didn't add anything. Well, it didn't add, oh, it actually did the research for it. It didn't add anything because I have to come down here and put down the prices. So I want to buy. Now I get some choices here. Select market to buy a stock right away at the current price, or choose a limit or stop. Now in the classes they do teach you what the difference between a limit, a stop, and the market is. Really quickly, the limit is you set a price of value of where you're going to, when you're going to buy a stock. Right now it's at $7.45. If this stock had been dropping, I could put a limit buy, which means when this drops down, so let's say I say $7. If that drops down to $7, I want to buy 100 shares. That would be a limit buy. A stop is, as a price is declining, what is the price you're going to sell out your stocks at? So you can put some fail-safes in. If I buy this at $7.45, I want to make sure I'm not going to lose more than a certain percentage, because I want to be very conservative with my $10,000. So I might put a stop order in. Now I'm looking at buying a market price. So the market price, that's where I'm going to first get stock. And it's important to let students know that all three of these things, buying at the market price, setting a limit as to when you want to start buying in, or setting a stop as to when you want to sell as a price is dropping. All three of these are called transactions. And transactions in almost all stock markets have a fee associated with them. Many of the fees now are down around $10 per transaction. So when I buy this, I want to be thinking, I need to make at least $10 to cover my fees. So it says buy. I have a market order. And I'm going to put down how many stocks I want. Let's put down, can I do 100? No, I can't. How much money do I have? Oh, I can do 100. I have to choose market. And I'm going to put 100 shares. It tells me already, here's the estimated price. It says estimation because the market's closed. And even if the market was open, when you place a buy order, that doesn't mean you're guaranteed this price. If the stock's radically changed in the last 15, 20 seconds or so, this price may not be available. And that's good for students to know too. And you can see over here the fees getting tacked on to this buy. So let's say I bought these 100 shares for $700. Now it's telling me right now bid and ask prices are delayed. And that's because the market's not currently open, and they normally have a delay in there anyway. to basically not have this be a real live simulation where people could do quick sells and quick buys. Now, I'm not going to be able to see a lot of the end result here because the markets aren't open. So it's going to do this buy order tomorrow morning when the market opens. So I won't be able to see that for now. But I may want to automatically set in a stop order, meaning sell this if the price drops below, I don't know, maybe 715. I would do some math and find out what percentage of a loss am I willing to take on this one company. So that's the nuts and bolts of buying. If you're going to sell, you would click on a trade that you, a stock you have in your portfolio. Let's see if I can go to my portfolio. Recent trades, my portfolio right here. View my portfolio. It's probably going to be, oh, I get that error message again. Let's try it one more time here. I do apologize for that. Oh, now I have it. It says I don't have any stocks in my portfolio yet, and that again is because the markets are closed. But if once that clears, I'll have that stock in here, and I can see how I've been doing over time. Students are going to get a lot of data over their holdings over time. I would challenge students with investing, as a homework assignment, invest all $10,000, and you have to have at least 5 different stocks. And what that does is it forces them, first of all, to diversify a little bit, because that's an important investment principle. And there's starter guides available up here in the menu that they may be interested in previewing before they actually do their investment. And I'll click on the starter guide so you can see what those are. This one in here, buying your first stock and learning the basics. I found this a very informative course that teaches me a lot of the, what's a limit, what's a stop buy. They also mention, I don't know if it's in the starter one, they mention what's buying on margin and in those kind of terms. So these are all the courses they have, and let me zoom that up a little bit so you can see that if you're not on the site. So here, how to buy bonds. Up here they had what is a bond. How do bonds differ from stocks? And then the bond market, what's a bond index? So you hear these things in financial news, and it's a vocabulary that is like a foreign language. We're not aware of these financial terms. Bond premiums. Someone who's taking out a loan might think, oh, premium, well, that's the amount on the loan. Well, does it mean the same thing with bonds, or is it slightly different? And then over here, mutual funds. So the amount of material that students could get into in terms of learning all the ins and outs of the language, there's a lot here to digest and process. What I found, though, was that if I want to just explore the markets, I need some other tools. So I'm going to jump into some other tools that are available online, and they allow me to play around with different graphs that are available, how really doing the research behind a company. The first one, and I do have the link on the Hanging with Education site to Yahoo Finance. So you'll see that's the second link. And there are many sites that have different finances. I've just pulled up a few examples. And over in the Yahoo Finance, they have a bunch of menus up top. And someone can spend a lot of time just checking through all the options on any of these sites and seeing what can they learn about what's going on with stocks. But what I like about this particular site is if I scroll down a little bit, and let me zoom that up a little bit so it's a little bigger. All right, that's probably as big as I'm going to be able to get it. Underneath, like the news bulletin, there's some videos and news you can get here. Down here, you can start seeing some of the news. What's going on in stocks. So there's all kinds of different reports. You'll see this one's from CNBC. This one's from The Street. And they're published at different times depending on the service. Here with Yahoo Finance, it doesn't look like these activities are very recent. This one's 9 hours ago. This one's yesterday. But there are different things that are going on. What are investors saying about investment? And on the right-hand side, you can see different stocks that are making news. These are different mutual funds. A mutual fund is think of it as a company getting a whole bunch of people's money together to buy a whole bunch of stocks in different markets so that you have a blended portfolio that doesn't get hit hard by any one loss and it doesn't make huge amounts by any one gain. It's more stable investment. So here you can see the biggest stock losers. Well, why would you want to see stock losers? These are questions you might ask learners. When you see stock losers, that might be a great time to buy. Many investors say any major loss is a great sign of a potential investment for the right company. And over here you can see the stock gainers. Well, it's pretty easy for a company like this one that's only $1.59 a price to have a big gain. So when you see 57%, is that a good thing? Well, it sounds great, but they only gained 58 cents. Versus someone had 35% gain and they gained 68 cents. So when you're teaching learners about percentages, just this one situation between these two stocks can be a great discussion piece when we talk about, wait a second, this one's a much higher percentage, but the actual amount is lower. And that's based on what was the original amount that we were taking the percentage off of. On any of these, if I want information about those stocks, let me go down to that new one here, the $1.59 one. I want to learn about that stock. I click on it, and it will bring me to, let me scroll over here to the side. This is how people can do their research, or at least part of their research. You have the price at close. You have how much it changed, and they give you a percentage, and it tells you on the date. But here on the summary, this is over today. So you can see it started here around 11 o'clock in the morning and went right up immediately. So it seems like this stock just opened today. Now, if I click on 5-day, oh, no, it didn't just open today. Interesting. So this looks like it's been open for a little bit. I can look at 1 day, 1 month, and I can look at maximize, the maximum amount of time. So I can go back here and say, well, what was the earliest this was available? It looks like September 7th, 2016 is when it opened right here. And it opened at 98 cents. So we can get a little bit of the financial history, not a whole lot. It started dipping off on September 14th. So I might want to go through the news events of what happened on the 14th. Why did this start dropping so far and then all of a sudden start going up to the high point where it is today? I might want to know that a little bit more. So I'm going to scroll down and look at a few of the other pieces of information. All of this stuff, when learners get the language and they really start getting into it, these are all critical stats they would need to know. But for most of our novices who are just poking around to explore, I don't get into this too much, other than you might want to mention something about the volume. The volume is like how many actual trades have happened today. There was 13,700. So if there's a lot of trades going on, that might be a positive sign, that might be a negative sign. And again, they could have some great discussions on that. The news is particularly nice because it filters off any news that is available through this service on this particular company. Now, this company is kind of small, so it doesn't surprise me that the news on this particular company isn't giving me a whole lot of information. There's nothing out. Was there a press release at all? No, there wasn't. And again, it's a small company. So let's go find something a little bigger. How about Walmart? WMT, Walmart. So let's click on that one. Let's see what we can find out about Walmart. And I'm going to go down to 1 day just so we can see what happens on Walmart for a day. So Walmart started out as a high really early this morning at around $72.53. And it dipped as low as, oh, this looks like a pretty low one, $71.53. So you can see this black line here. This is 71.97. And great question to our students is, what might that line represent? And if you're getting into the standards of deviation, you can see that that's going to be the mean for the day. That gets really interesting when I start looking at larger times like 5 days or a month. Notice that the mean isn't really listed here. So it would be interesting to see how students determine that mean and how they come up with that. That can get into some moderate level stats depending on what the students come up with for strategies. This is year to date, and of course the maximum. This is since time first started out here, where it came, well, as far back as they go. Well, let's go back down here to news. I'm going to click on news. And I can see down here, there's news things that may not be directly related to Walmart, but Walmart may be mentioned in some of these reports. So Walmart must face a U.S. class action over alleged Mexican bribery. That was 23 minutes ago from Reuters. Here I can see an article from Bloomberg. So when we look at the CCRS in the English language arts area, and we're talking about needing to read from nonfiction writings, these articles here were students trying to determine whether they should invest in a company or not. These writings here could be very rich material for some of our students. Now, not all of our students are going to get into the idea of stocks. But you can see I clicked on one of the articles here. It's not like this is a large article. Some of these articles are just a little news blurb that hit the wire, and that's all there is. So I'm going to go back and see if the other article had a little bit more juice to it. And if I come down here, it just gives me a brief. So a student can still take a look at a very brief set of nonfiction writing and work with that small subset in terms of how they're doing their purchases here. And there are some CCRS standards that could easily be applied for very short passages like that. So Walmart, you can see, has tons of, I mean, this is 7 hours ago, 8 hours ago, many stories for learners to look through to see what's going on. Now, the fact that Walmart may have to, people are suing them over Mexican bribe claims, I don't know, that doesn't really endear me to saying that this stock is going to be very safe. But if we look at how many hours ago, that was 25 minutes ago. So if I go back up here to my graph and I look at the daily chart, 25 minutes ago, if I look at what the price was, well, I don't go back too far on this list here. It doesn't look like there was a major hit. You'll notice up here it says interactive chart. And with an interactive chart, we have an awful lot more information. Where I move my mouse and cursor, notice up on the left-hand side, I get all kinds of feedback. So we talk about, in mathematics, being able to read charts and graphs and be able to make inferences from them. You could just take a screenshot of this particular graph and ask students, if this was a stock, would this be a stock you would buy? Would you sell it? Or would you just wait before deciding to sell or buy? And why? and have students rationalize whether it would be a good time to buy or sell this stock. It would have been a great time down here to buy it. And I don't know. It looks like it's peaked. Maybe it might be coming down. Maybe someone could rationalize that Monday morning would be a good time to sell this. But this gets us real live data students can process. So this is just Yahoo Finances. I do have links to other places. Bloomberg has very similar data. Bloomberg starts in, I want to say, a more global perspective because they break down the markets, the major markets. So you'll notice here that there's different markets, and that may be news for learners. Like, what are the differences between the different markets? Does each one carry the same stocks, or is a stock only found in one particular market? So that Walmart stock, was that just in one market, or was that in other markets? So they can learn that simply by exploration and say, okay, let's go to NYSE. That's the New York Stock Exchange. If I click on that, I'm now going to get information about the New York Stock Exchange. I can see how that particular market did. And what's interesting is the idea of comparing markets. How did the market in New York do, say, compared to a market in a different country? So I can hit back and I can get information. Well, actually, I think all these are American. I think I can get, oh, here's Europe and Middle East. So over here, here's European and Middle East. So let's go ahead and pull this one up. We can take a look at what's happened. Again, graph analysis. How does this graph compare to the graph of the New York Stock Exchange? We also have data down here that they can process. I like the Bloomberg one because it's very easy to get a global perspective on what's going on in the world, in the big markets. And then if I want to know more specific about individual stocks, I could dive into the market and look for particular stocks. Another one I am partial to is Google Finance. What I like about this is Google Finance even has a portfolio section. Let me make this a little larger. So in Google Finance, not only do you see how the markets were doing, and you can see a graph of how they were performing, the top 3 markets in the US, but down here I can also see all the top stories. And I can also immediately see the world markets. So right here on this one page, I'm getting an awful lot of information available in abbreviated formats, and I can click on any of these to get more detailed information. So if I want to find out what's really going on in Shanghai markets, I click on Shanghai markets and check out the graph I get. Now this graph happens to have a lot more detail because over here on the right hand side, it shows me news as of the date. So over here, Article C here, Shanghai Composite, let me go over here to the right. Shanghai Composite Index sheds 66 points as financial struggle. So there's a whole news article, and that took place right over here on the graph at point C. This is a nice way to help learners start to explore what does a peak mean on a stock quote? What does a valley mean in a stock quote? What could be happening? By reading some of the news articles that are directly linked to valleys and peaks along the way, students are getting a pretty good hang of, wow, oh, here's how some of that news changes things. And I love the data. Of course, Google is a search engine, so they do have quite a bit more data available in their work. But you can see that the map here, we do have, the graph, we have month. They have now 3 months, 6 month, a yearly, 5 years, 10 years, and all. So this is all the same stock price. And when, now this is a market, I'm sorry, this isn't just an individual stock. But you'll notice I can add it to my portfolio. So I don't even need to register with Wallstreet Survivor to do that. The advantage of a Wallstreet Survivor is I can make my own tournament, and I can add in my students or add in other classes so we can have competitions. Here within Google Finance, I can make my own portfolios. In fact, I'm going to click on Portfolio on the left-hand side to show you, okay, my portfolio is empty. So I can add whatever I'd want on there. So I'm going to go back to Markets, and let's choose something from the New York Stock Exchange. Do we have one that we want to look for? Let's do Walmart. We did that earlier. So Walmart, that's in Chile. I don't want Walmart in Chile. Walmart store is right here. And it tells me which exchange it's on. That's the New York Stock Exchange. And I'm afraid I don't know what the OTC stands for. I've heard the market, I just don't remember what it is. So I want to buy some Walmart. So I click on Add to Portfolio. It tells me what the symbol is. I want to add transaction data. And I want to choose what type this is. Is this a buy, sell, buy to cover, or sell short? These two are a little bit more advanced, so I probably would not start with that. Notice I don't have a stop or a sell order here, or a limit order rather. So that's a little limiting here as well. And I can put in when do I want to buy this. So I want to buy it tomorrow morning. I want to buy a certain amount. Let's say I wanted to buy 100 shares. And what price do I want to buy it at? Now see, what I don't like here is it doesn't show me what the, it shows me the going price down here, 71.19. I want to buy it for 70. Well, I'll do it right here at this price. See if it opens up. Now what will happen is as the market opens, if the price is at 72.91 or below, it'll buy it. If it's above, it'll just sit here waiting for me. How much of a commission? Let's say $10, and any notes I might have just so I can keep track of what was I planning on doing with this in my investment. And I can click Add to Portfolio. Now it did say deduct from cash. I can set up in my portfolio a certain cash amount. So I can set this all up just like I did in Wallstreet Survivor with these tools as well. And we have just a few more minutes. So in addition to this powerful tool called Google Finance, I wanted to throw something in there for the computer geeks that are out there. If you go into Google Sheets, which is part of Google Docs, they have a formula called Google Finance. And let me make that a little larger. Google Finance is a formula that does a number of different things. And I'm just doing very simple stock lookup. So over here I typed in the abbreviation for Google, and Google automatically goes out and looks up the price for Google stock. This is Apple stock. We were just looking at Walmart. What was that? WMT. So I'll just type in WMT. And you'll notice that I set this up so that it automatically looks for any name in this column and then goes ahead and looks up the current price. And that changes in real time. So Wallstreet Survivor had a 15-minute delay. This is in real time. Google's checking that, every so many seconds and updating the price. Now the markets are closed right now, so we don't see this moving. It does say on the bottom, quotes are not sourced from all markets, and they may be delayed up to 20 minutes. So it could be delayed up to 20 minutes. I may see updates quite frequently, but they're not guaranteeing. In other words, don't use this as an investment tool if you're going to do quick trades. What I wanted to show here and highlight is not only is this pretty slick, you could set up your own kind of spreadsheet to track all this, but I wanted to show, this is the help page, and again, this is on the Hanging with Education site. It's the last link. Google Finance is a help page, and what I wanted to show you was just how many options are available. I was using the price, but look over here, all the different terms. Oh, you can't see that because that's so small. Let me make that bigger. I'm going to have to set my browser to be a default when I'm projecting. That would be nice. So I have price, the price when it opens, the high, the low, the volume. These are all terms that a learner can learn about with the stocks and put those into a spreadsheet. So they're tracking the things that are important to the learner. So now instead of me dictating, your spreadsheet should track this, that, and the other thing, I can introduce what all these terms are, what are they used for in the stock market, and let the learners decide which ones would you need to keep track of. Is the price just enough? Would you want the high and low? How would you use those in terms of buying and selling? And down below at the bottom, they give us some examples of the formula and how you would write it. So if they have a hard time with the syntax, do I need a comma? Does it need quotes? They can actually just copy some of these formulas down, paste them in, and then tweak them a little bit by adding different items in. And I can come down here for historical data. They're giving me the high for a particular date. Again, more examples all the way through. So Google Finance, to me, I didn't want to be totally biased throughout the whole thing today, but Google Finance, between what's available at the Google Finance site and what's available in the Google Sheets in terms of the Google Finance formula and all the different parameters it can check on, I find this a very powerful combination. It is a little bit more geeky than Wallstreet Survivor. Wallstreet Survivor, I can get students in, give them an amount of money, let them go. And we can start learning about stocks simply by comparing how everybody's doing against each other. It might be a slower way to learn, but that discovery learning is nice because nobody's losing any money here. And nobody has to take any risks unduly with something like stocks. Are there any questions about any of the tools or any thoughts or ideas? Again, I do apologize for not having other video and audio options available. I'm not really sure how we set that up, and I'm going to keep looking for ways we can do that. Right now, the positive news is that we can do the chat, and it is recorded, which is very helpful. So I'm waiting for the feed to catch up to me to see if there are any questions or thoughts. And I'm going to check that chat out in a minute here. Oh, I can check it while it's running. This is good. I'm sorry. Again, I'm experimenting with YouTube Live, and I wanted to make sure that I could see people's comments. I know that next week I'm thinking a topic we may do is the cartoons and comics have been a big topic in the Links network, and we have shared a bunch of tools. I know Lisi has been sharing some tools, and I believe David has some tools to share on there as well. And I mentioned the possibility of using Google Presentation as a comic generator of sorts. And I did a sample example, and there was some interest in finding out how that sample example was made. So possibly next week we might experiment with how Google Presentation can be used as a tool to introduce making comic books or comic strips with learners. And I think that would be a very interesting exploration for people to dive into. As always, I want to share with you that on 5squared.us, there's an area on the right-hand side for suggested topics. If there are topics that really you'd be interested in exploring, please make sure you go in there. All you have to do is type in the topic, an email address so I can contact you for a little bit more information if I have questions. And then if you can just tell me what, state you're from or what country you're from, that helps me with knowing who's actually contributing. I haven't seen any questions. I do see a comment from David saying, thanks, Ed. Thank you, David, for typing in the chat. So I'm aware that people are able to do so. And I look forward to connecting with people next week. And if you have a topic, let me know what you'd like to do. Thank you all very much. Now I have to figure out how to stop this thing.